Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining this webinar about mainly focusing on water lilies. We had this originally set up for the 7th of November, but then we had to reschedule to today, and appreciating that it's end of the year and school work is probably getting busier. So thank you very much for sparing some of your free time in the evening to join us. We will start with our colleague Clémentine, who will be talking about more on the gender roles aspect of the movie. Let's say I don't want to spoil too much. She also ran a session in our recent symposium, and I guess there will be some relationship to the topics there as well. And then we will follow with my two colleagues, your fellow teachers, Achilleas and Carlota, who will be focusing more on the educational kit that can be found on the European Film Factory platform in the page of the Water Lilies movie. This is a kit for those who may not have joined other webinars in this series. This is a educational kit to be used for classroom activities and using this movie as an activity in your classroom settings. And so, without further ado, I will just pass it on to Clémentine to get us started, and then we will move on to the kit with Achilleas and Carlota. Thank you both, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rai. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. So today I will be talking to you about gender inclusivity, gender diversity, and inclusivity on and off screen. Can you just confirm that you're seeing that you're actually seeing the screen, that you're actually seeing the presentation, because I cannot see it.
I just see a white screen now. Oops!
Okay.
Now it works. Oh, some new Teams functions, I think.
What are you exactly seeing? Because I'm actually not able to. I'm not able to show to see the screen that I'm actually trying to share. It seems to not be completely working. Maybe Erai, can you?
Maybe I will do that. Yes, indeed.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. But,
no worries, no worries.
Yeah, you're seeing a black screen. Okay. Yeah, it says that it works, but I can't see it, so I don't understand why. I'm sorry. So, well, let me just introduce you while Erai is sharing the file with you. So,
Clémentine, did you send me your? Sorry. Yeah, I just got it now. Okay, never mind. I'll share it to you.
So I'm Clémentine Charlemagne. I'm the general delegate of Cinéma pour tous, which means Cinema for All. We're based in Paris, France, but we also have actions in several cities in France. And we annually invite over 5,000 teenagers from underprivileged neighborhoods in France to discover films in theaters and in different contexts. So I'm also the co-president of the Collectif 50-50, Collectif 50-50, which is an NGO that collaborates with institutions, with the film industry, in order to promote gender equality, diversity, and inclusivity, both on and off screen. So today we'll talk about gender diversity, gender inclusivity, gender identities, in order to be able to understand the key terms and how cinema can have an influence on people's mindset and awareness. We will start with a general introduction and then some basic concepts regarding this topic. And then we will delve into the film Water Lilies by Céline Sciamma, which challenges the film challenges the stereotypes with characters that young people can easily relate to. And then I will pass on to Achilleas and Carlota after that. So, Eric, can you maybe move to the third page, actually? Thank you. So understanding and addressing the key terms is crucial for promoting a society that values and respects individuals regardless of their gender identity and expression. So when we talk about diversity, when talking about people, we usually refer to the presence of a wide range of human differences within a group and or an organization or a society. So these differences can encompass various aspects of an individual's identity, such as race and ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, religion, ability and disabilities, socioeconomic status, language, cultural background, nationality, education and experience, thought and perspective. So promoting diversity often involves recognizing, valuing, and respecting these differences and ensuring that they are represented and included in various aspects of society, such as workplaces, educational institutions, and communities. But also, as you can imagine today, also in films. As for inclusivity, so when we talk about inclusivity, when talking about people, it refers to the practice of actively involving and accommodating individuals from diverse backgrounds. So diverse backgrounds, diverse identities, diverse experiences, and in all aspects of society. It aims to create an environment, a community, or an organization where everyone feels valued, respected, and including regardless of the differences. So, so the key aspects of inclusivity include equal access, representation, respect and valuing differences, equity, accessibility, cultural competence, and inclusive language. For instance, I know this depends on the language you speak in general and the grammar, but that also works. So I'm sorry. Can you move to the next slide? So diversity, embracing diversity fosters inclusivity. And so that can lead to increased creativity, innovation, a broader understanding of different perspectives and cultures. It's an important concept in building equitable and fair societies where everyone has equal opportunities and is treated with dignity and respect. So inclusivity goes beyond mere tolerance of differences. It actively seeks to embrace and celebrate diversity, ensuring that no one is marginalized or excluded based on their identity or background. So as the slide says it here, diversity is a response to what or who, and inclusivity is a response to how. It involves action. Let's move on to the next slide maybe so that I can talk about gender identities. So gender identities refer to the personal and cultural perceptions, feelings, and understandings of one's own gender. It's important to note that gender identity is deeply personal. It's a deeply personal aspect of a person's identity, and everyone's experience of gender can be unique. So some people identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. So these persons are called cisgender, while others do not identify with this gender. So they are either transgender or non-cisgender. And then these identities may align with the traditional categories of male and female. So they're binary gender identities. But they also may exist outside or in between these categories. And in this case, they're called non-binary or gender diverse identities. And they are fluid, they can evolve. Then gender identities are not necessarily fixed forever. Let's move on to the next slide, please. It's important to understand that, thank you, that there is a distinction between gender identity and biological sex, and how gender identity is very intimately tied to an individual's experience of self-perception or self-understanding. So Before moving on to some more concrete observations, I wanted to mention that gender stereotypes, which will probably be discussed when talking about the film Water Lilies. So gender stereotypes are often oversimplified beliefs or assumptions about the roles, behaviors, attributes, and characteristics that society associates with individuals based on their perceived gender. So these stereotypes can be harmful as they reinforce traditional and limiting ideas about what it means to be male or female. Gender stereotypes tend to lead to discrimination, inequality, and the perpetuation of harmful norms. So challenging and breaking down gender stereotypes is an important step towards achieving gender diversity and inclusivity. And so now I think we can talk also about why representation and inclusivity in films are important. And we can maybe move to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So Synégalité is a study that was made by the Collectif 50/50, which started with the idea that representation matters. And as a matter of fact, despite the fact that many films serve as tools to combat stereotypes, many of them also perpetuate them, and on many levels. So can you maybe move to the slide that's coming right after, please? So an interesting observation in this study is that it actually showed, so it was made based on all the 100 films that were the most successful in France, released in 2019. So it was a study that was made on all the characters that appeared in all these 100 films that were released in 2019 in France. And an interesting observation on this study is that it actually showed that underrepresentation of minorities diminishes when women are in control. By in control, I mean production team, or that they are the director of the film. And so diversity on and off screen is actually better represented when a film is led by a woman. We also, can you move on to the next slide, please? We also worked on, so it was a study on representation in general. And so we realized that there were a majority of male character when coming to the main characters and all characters in general in films, and as opposed to the actual part of the representation that they are of the population that they are. So there's an over-representation of cisgender men, for instance. There's also an over-representation of white characters. For instance, there are 81% of female characters who are perceived as white, and 75% of male characters who are perceived as white, which do not reflect the society and its diversity at all. So that the study was able to point such a contrast with the reality that it was actually impossible to then avoid the fact that there is discrimination involved in filmmaking as well. And so there was also an overrepresentation of, for example, executives and higher intellectual professions who make up 51% of characters whose socioeconomic category is known. And in France, for instance, so there are 51% in films, but in the reality, there are only 18% of the active population. So it's completely it's completely unbalanced with the reality. And at the other end of the spectrum, we find 4% of workers among the characters, but they are 21% of the workforce in France. Then there is another study that I wanted to talk about, which is in the next slide. which is the over 50 years old tunnel. So today in France, 52%, I don't know, Ray, if you are still here for the, thank you. So today in France, 52% of the adult population is over 50 years old, and they represent a quarter of the total adult population. And however, this real life majority is treated as an invisible minority in fiction, because only 7% of the roles are given to actresses over 50 years old. And so in contrast to their male counterparts, women in the world of cinema seem to have only one choice: either they are young or they remain young. But beyond artistic creations, beyond being artistic creations, fiction films convey norms, they convey values, they offer models that influence our perception of the world. They shape our collective unconscious. And so what does a society tell us when it tells us, when it tells its stories by excluding women over 50, by excluding underrepresented by excluding minorities that are underrepresented? And in the case of women over 50, they are at an age of power and maturity. And so we also have to question what models we're providing to younger generation for them to build upon. And being invisible in the image, then people just fade from the collective imagination. And so we tend to think that who is not represented does not really exist in the collective unconscious. Let's move on to the next slide, and the concept of male and female gaze. So I wanted to talk about this because it will be, I think, very interesting to dig into this when talking about what are LILIES. So just to talk to you about the male gaze, in case some of you are not familiar with it. In 1975, the film critic Laura Mulvey penned an essay titled "Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema," which I think, if you're interested, you can receive, because I actually sent it to the French Institute. So in this essay, she introduced the concept of the male gaze, drawing from Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. And the essay elucidates how the concept of male and female gaze, male gaze, emanates from the patriarchal collective unconscious. So she explained how this concept exposed cinema's tendency to objectify women predominantly in portraying them as objects of desire, thereby underscoring the need for a deeper critical analysis. So she distinguishes three types of gaze: that of the camera, that of the characters, and that of the viewer. And so she demonstrates that each time the subjective vision of the main is favored. And over the past 15 to 20 years, French female filmmakers have emerged onto the cinematic stage, and they're marking their growth in parallel with societal changes. So in recent years, specifically in the 2010s and 2020s, significant response to this prevailing perspective has emerged by acknowledging the female gaze. So it's a cinematic perspective that's challenging the conventions of the male gaze. And some female filmmakers have emerged, marking their have emerged also showing that they really are conscious of that male and that female gaze and how they want to be acknowledged for that. I wanted also to mention the fact that the female gaze, even though it was it seems like a very new concept, was always present, because the first female fiction filmmaker is actually a woman who is called Alice Guy, and it has only now come into focus that a female director's perspective can offer innovative narrative viewpoints. So it's a game changer in the film industry, because it challenges old ideas about women and about how movies usually show them. So unlike the male gaze, which often objectifies women or portrays them as passive objects for male viewers, the female gaze aims to depict women as empowered individuals with their own desire, their own agency, their own experiences. So it prioritized a storytelling that centers on women's perspective on emotions and lives and inner lives. And the concept of female gaze doesn't mandate that a film must be directed by a woman. Instead, it emphasizes that storytelling and cinematography should authentically portray women's experiences, and challenge gender stereotypes. So it's a significant aspect of feminist film theory, fostering a more diverse and inclusive representation of women in cinema. I then wanted to talk to you about some easy resource to evaluate some stereotypical representation, such as the Bechdel test. So the Bechdel test is a simple test that is used to evaluate gender representations in film. So it asks whether a film meets 3 criteria. So the movie has to have at least 2 women in it who talk to each other and about something else than a man. And by 2 female characters, usually we also include the idea that they also have a name, that we know their name, but it's a tool for highlighting gender disparities in film and storytelling. And it doesn't directly address the male or female gaze, but it's related in that it points to the fact that many films primarily revolve around male characters and their concerns. So it illustrates how women are often relegated to secondary roles or reduced to discussing men in the narrative. And I think it's also interesting to, once you're conscious of that, then actually try to think about all the films that you see and how very often the resolution of the plot will come from a man. Like even in some films that are focused on women, then it's a man who will help the film to find a solution for its ending, and it's something that's interesting to be very aware of. And it's also the same thing with the over 50-year-old tunnel test that you can do. So it's about them, like, is there at least 1 woman over 50? If yes, does she have a speaking role? And also, does she have a role that's apart from any family role? Is she something else than just a wife, a mother, or a grandmother? Does she have a social commitment or a professional activity? You can also do this with, I know there are some tests that also exist with some questions that are more directed towards diversity, race diversity, ethnicity, and all kinds of discriminations that you could actually see. So just I think we can move on to a bit of a conclusion. So yes, there are. What I wanted to share today is that representation and identification matter a lot to the viewers, and so there is something. It's kind of the motto of the Gina Davis Center. It's, if you can see it, you can be it. So once you actually are aware that it actually exists, and representation actually matters, and you can realize that you could maybe have this person as a role model to also make a change in your own life. So that's important to understand, and I think that's something that was very important for the filmmaker Céline Sciamma when she made Water Lilies, because she worked a lot on these questions. Then this also leads towards more empathy, and it helps you gain understanding. It's important to be aware of that, to fight stereotypes, and when you provide pedagogical support, just like what you already received, it also helps the audience to engage with the film. Like when you do when you work on the pedagogical aspect of what you're showing, then I guess, yeah, I mean, you know it better than anyone, but it's really important. And what's also important when it comes to such topics is to always keep the discussion up and open, because it helps foster tolerance. And if the discussion doesn't seem open, then it's really, really hard. Yeah, it's a really hard aspect to discuss. Then just I think I will soon leave the we have a last slide, so I will soon leave the webinar presentation, but I just wanted to introduce the film Water Lilies, which is Céline Sciamma's first feature film. So since the beginning of her work as a screenwriter and filmmaker, she has been actively contributing to changing representation and fighting stereotypes. And in 2018, she actually became one of the co-founder of the Collectif 50/50, which I told you earlier about. And she's been very involved in promoting the work of filmmakers in order to broaden perspectives. So in this film, she offers a nuanced portrayal of women, of female adolescents, and she subverts sexual orientation stereotypes, centering the narratives on women and showcasing diverse female characters, empowering characters through self-discovery. And it features a lesbian subplot that showcases the diversity of sexual identities and relationships. She emphasizes on that love and desire can take various forms, and so that's a subplot, but that's also a very intimate portrayal of 3 teenager girls and she digs into how lonely adolescents can be. So that's not only about just like lesbian adolescents, but that's really about how intimacy is shown also, and how the loneliness of adolescents. And because it's set during a summer break, it's the story of Marie, who is desperate to join the local pool synchronized swimming team, and it turns out that her interest is more oriented toward one of the girls on the team than for the sake of the sport. And Céline Sciamma says that her favorite comment or compliment about the film is to hear that I wish I had seen this film when I was 15. So that is also one argument for how representation is actually something that's that all these new filmmakers and this new era of filmmakers are very conscious about. And I think it is time for me to talk to let Achilles speak.
So, thank you, Clementine, for this.
Sorry,
yep.
Achilles.
I
think
sorry.
There was a question for Clementine before we move on to the more specifics of the movie. I believe this came in through the end of your presentation regarding the after you talked about the test and the gaze, male-female gaze issues. So, and more generally about filmmakers. So the question is, what do you think can be done to push, more filmmakers to pay attention to these issues?
Thank you for your question. It's actually very interesting that you're asking that, because this is one of the main areas of lobbying, actually, of the Collectif 50/50. We work with public institutions, so the CNC, which is the center, the French National Center for Film. We work with them on various obligations somehow, not obligations, but actually we would work on, for example, because we have realized that more women on set also imply more tolerance, more better behaviors in general on film sets. There is now some public funding that you can get if you, for example, have at least 50% of women hired on the film. And then the study that was made, Inégalité, really made a change. It was even bigger than expected because people actually realized how stereotypical they were. So the way we talk about it is really that we do a lot of like round tables and things like that. We work with the syndicates. We work with our unions. Sorry, we work with institutions. We work in the press. We try to raise awareness on this, and then we also, for example, work with some screenwriters or some casting directors who can talk about how, for example, there's a casting director on the board of the Collectif 50/50 who always says to the directors, well, I see I see the script of the film and it's really interesting, but why is this role a male? Why is this role a female? Why do you actually want this person to be gendered in the script? Like, does it have an actual importance in the scenario? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And it's actually very important that to realize that sometimes it's just because you have to be conscious of your own stereotypical views on this. And so also one thing that we do is that we try to push people to some trainings to fight sexual harassments and sexual violence. And in these train internships, there's a part that is really focused also on stereotypes. And so I think it's also the thing, like once you see it, you can't unsee it. So once, like the Bechdel test, once you start thinking about it, it's really hard not to think about it when you watch a film after that. So on one side, you're happy because you know something more, but on the other side, you're kind of unable to see a film with the lightness that you used to. And I think that's also very important because then you also sometimes have very nice surprises, but that's a day-to-day fight.
So,
sorry, it was very long reply.
Thank you, Clémentine, for this presentation. And I'm going to present you the educational kit in terms of expressive means. We are working on this challenging film. Was made back in 2007. I think my students now in school are born around 2007. So I think my students now lives on this kind of fluidity that Clémentine described before. So we had a big challenge to write an educational guide about this movie, and we tried to focus on some expressive means. In the beginning, we tried to understand the title in French, and the translation in English is The Birth of Octopuses. That means that the director tried to, with plural, to give this kind of the multiplicity of male desire and the process of transformation and change undergone at the beginning of puberty. The title as well refers to the mythology, especially the Metamorphosis by Ovid, and the paintings by French painter Monet. The second focus was on music score. We liked it a lot. The music made by Para One as a nickname of this kind of person, which is electronic music producer. I think we try to decode the music, and we find that the music combines the childishness with anguish and the mystery with the unknown and the mythical with the real. The third focus was the color and the four-color palette. We noticed the blue, turquoise, green, and nauseous yellow, especially in the drownings and the swimsuits and the pool. All of these chromatic multiplicity calls for the multiplier interpretation of the psychology and situation of a teenager. As well, the four-color palette invites the viewer to the multiplicity of the souls, the characters and their goals, instead of a fixed persona of teenage girl and the stereotypical behavior. I think Clémentine referred a lot to this. And the last note is about the depiction of the ups and downs of the first agony of teenage love, the attraction and the fascination that develops between the lovers the first time of the sexual act. The third focus in the expressive means in the educational kit was the stable camera. The fixed camera use the two levels of reality. The first one is the surface, and the second one is the depth of adolescence. And this came up with the camera, which dives into the pool in order to show what lies beneath the surface. Literally, we can see the exposition of the body, as you can see on the photo, but psychologically, we can feel the fluidity of the roles and the desires in puberty. The second focus was on the bodies and desires. The main protagonist, the Florian, and perfect body of Florian symbolically represents the power of seductions built by femininity, appearance, and artifice, and the duality of desire. Lack and possession are the two main mechanisms of love, which these girls erupts to the other girl. The second girl, the Marie symbolizes the passage from childhood to the adulthood, and the experiences of love emotions, frustration, repressions, and lack of the love object. And as well, we think Marie symbolizes the homoerotic desire as a journey of self-awareness. And the third person, the character of Anne, we think that symbolizes, and especially her body type, the counterexample to Florian, the anxiety of the teenager about his or her body, and she only wants to fulfill the sexual intensity and experience. The sixth part of expressive means is the location. The new town of Cergy-Pontoise was constructed back in the 70s and was a symbol of the kind of mixture of the French society, and represents the urban and social diversity through three female protagonists. Actually, it's the home city of the director Chamin, and of course has autobiographical reference. The film was awarded by several awards in France and in Athens as well, and in the Cannes Film Festival, the Olympiad of Film Festival, we can say, was nominee for 2 awards, on Uncertain Regard Award and the Golden Camera. The director, Céline Sciamma, I think Clémentine mentioned a lot of her work, is one of the most visible and important feminist and representative member of the LGBTQI+ in international filmmaking. And she stood next to the veteran director Agnieszka Varda on the steps of the Palais at the Cannes Film Festival in 2018, campaigning for gender parity in the film industry, accompanied by the Collectif 50/50, who introduced the gender parity pledge, Clémentine explained, and works on the issues of equality and diversity within the film industry. I think, and the next movies by Céline Sciamma is very beautiful. Petit Mama is very beautiful movie about the childhood. And the last one that I want to present of the last part of educational week kit is the mind maps. You can see here the links that through the poster we can see the sex discrimination, Céline Sciamma other films, gender identity, and study cases. And with this last shot, I think I finished my presentation, and I give my seat to Carlos now.
Thank you, Achilles. So I will show how this film can become a part of various classes across the school curriculum. So you can see on the slide different propositions. So in history classes, for example, teachers can show the evolution of feminism in history, for example, by presenting the different waves of feminism and showing how the themes addressed in this particular film fit into the historical context. And it is also possible to study the careers and work of other female directors in cinema. In literature, teachers can use this film as part of a study of the representation of female characters, highlighting the specificity of female characters created and represented by women, which is the case with Water Lilies. And it also can be linked to the concept of female and male gaze in cinema, as Clémentine explained. In civic education, of course, this film can be a good starting point for a discussion about gender discrimination, gender identities, LGBTQ+ rights, and inclusivity. As the film is, the language of the film is French, the Water Lilies can be shown in French classes to learn some specific expressions in French. So students can watch the whole film or focus on a few scenes which show expressions about how to make friends, how to make invitations, how to talk about the human body, how to talk about free time and summer holidays. Then the discovery of sexuality is one of the film's major themes. So for this reason, it can also be used in biology classes as part of a lesson about the functioning of the reproduction organs. And finally, teachers might also want to show this film in physical education if the students take part in water sports like swimming or even artistic swimming, which is the sport practiced by the female characters in the film. So now I will present 2 of the 4 activities that you can find in the pedagogical kits. All the activities have been thought for different ages, and this is always specified at the beginning of each activity. And they have different levels of difficulty. All the activities serve a dual purpose, so to not only to reflect on the story, the characters, their relationships with each other, but they also aim to encourage film literacy in the classroom, so to develop students' ability to analyze films from a cinematographic point of view. So, for example, to develop the ability to link the director's choices to the effects they produce on the viewer, and to analyze the camera movements, the shots, the acting, the music, the editing, etc. So we'll see two different propositions. So the first activity is called representation of 3 female characters, and so it focuses on the 3 female characters which were already presented, Anne, Marie, and Floriane. And this activity has been thought for 15 to 18-year-old students and is of intermediate difficulty, so it's quite accessible. So in the first step, after watching the film, we split the class into 3 groups, which will each focus on 1 female character, and so each group will watch different scenes related to their character. You can find the different scenes linked to each character in the pedagogical kit, and for each scene you just need to click on the link, and you will have access to the scene which has already been cut. So there are about between 3 and 5 scenes for each character, and all the scenes show the characters' feelings towards their bodies. So, for example, for Floriane, we have scenes which show how she seems very confident, and she's watched and admired by the others, but in another scene we understand that she actually feels insecure with her sexuality. For Marie, there are different scenes who show that she looks ashamed of her body in the changing room, and she wants to work out to have a stronger body, and another scene where we can see clearly her attraction to Floriane. And for Anne, the scenes show how clumsy she can be with her body, but also very free by dancing, for example, at the party. So students analyze their character by paying attention to the costumes, the makeup, the hairstyle, the character's perception of their own bodies, and the other girls' or boys' bodies, the way their sexuality and sexual experiences are represented. In step 2, students share their analysis with the class, and so we arrive at the 3rd step, which is the next slide. So in the next step, we Can you hear me? Because I was disconnected.
Yeah, Carlota, we just lost you, I think, there for a bit, but we can hear you now.
Okay, so in the 3rd step, we ask the students, so the whole classroom, these different questions. What are the similarities and differences between Marie and Floriane, Marie and Anne, Anne and Floriane? How does the film depict the female body and sexuality? How do characters symbolize social stereotypes on females? How is the film language, so costumes, makeup, hairstyle, and screenplay, used to show different female characters? To which character can you relate and why? And why is the film still related to modern society and new generations of teenagers? So we can see that through this activity, the students learn to recognize the importance of film language, such as I said, costumes, makeup, hairstyles, screenplay, as crucial parts in creating characters and in storytelling. And they also become aware of gender stereotypes and LGBTQ+ discriminations. And they also become aware of social pressure put on the body image. There is a fourth and optional step where teachers can ask students to write a film review based on the representation of these three female characters. So this is more to develop writing and synthesis skills. Now I will talk about a second activity which you can find within the pedagogical kit, which is called the mise en scène of introductory and ending scene. And this is the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is again an activity also thought for 15 to 18-year-old students, but it's a bit more difficult than the previous one. And this time it explores the role of music in this film. So actually the extra diegetic music, so the music which comes from outside the story and which is heard by the audience and not by the characters. And it focuses on just two scenes, the first one, the introductory one, and the ending one, which are two very beautiful scenes and very interesting to comment on and can also be compared. These two scenes are already cut like the previous scenes I already described for the previous activity, and are also accessible on the platform. In the first step, students listen to the Para One's music, which Achilles described. So it's the music from the title scene, but without the images. They've already seen the film, but we just listen to the music again without the images, and we ask the following questions. What kind of emotions does the music trigger in you? If you do like the music, what elements of the music interest you? And do you remember the shots corresponding to the music? So this step is aimed to show how music is linked to emotions, images, and mental images. In the second step, this is a group activity. So students watch the introductory scene and answer the following questions. So this time with the images, linking the music to the images. So the first question, how is the music connected to the image? How does the music support the plot, the characters, and the theme of the movie? And what do the other elements of the mise en scène convey? So camera position and movement, shots, frame, colors, editing, and acting. This time, students might talk about what Achilles already talked about. So the ambivalent atmosphere, Achilles talked about childishness and anguish atmosphere. Also, there is an aquatic atmosphere created by the electronic music. So students can also comment on other effects like the camera's movement, which dives into the changing room, etc. And in the last step of this activity, groups present their findings in the classroom and discuss together the similarities or differences they found. And so this step can be repeated for the final scene, and it can also lead to a comparison between the introductory scene and the ending scene. So this is an activity which aims to show the students how to interpret the meaning of the music in a film and to recognize its role in the representation of a character. So I've finished my part about these activities, but you will find the other activities online on the platform in the pedagogical kit.
All right. Thank you, Carlota, for the presentation, and also Achilles. And I would like to take that opportunity also to thank Clémentine once more for that great introductory and perspective on the gender issues that is also seen in this particular movie. It was great to hear from all of you, and I'm just looking at the chat to see if there are any questions or comments from the participants. And I see some people typing already, so let's give it a second and then we can. So there's an interesting question actually. Did you, from Justina, I hope I say that right. Did you prepare any activities connected with Sergi de Pontoise? My French is terrible, so please forgive me for mispronouncing it probably, but architecture.
That's an interesting suggestion. Actually, I think there is no activity about Sergi in the kit, but it could also be interesting to link this reflection with there is another famous figure of literature which comes from Sergi, which is Annie Ernaux, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, I think 2 years ago, and she talks a lot about Sergi and in her books, and it could be interesting to do some work about the representation of Sergi in Annie Ernaux's books and in Céline Sciamma's film, which are two very famous feminist. One is director and the other one is a writer, so it could be interesting.
Indeed, and perhaps the activities in this kit can also give an inspiration to the teachers who use them to create their own activities in relation. So, for instance, about the town architecture. So yeah, that might also be an interesting approach to this. Producing even more classroom activities out of the kits.
And can I add something, Nora?
Please, Achilles, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think somebody can use the architecture as part of mise-en-scène, as part of the shot or the camera movement, to explain or to ask the students why the director here chooses this location, this kind of shot in this location. I asked my students and they replied that this is kind of phallic statue, this kind of, in the city. So I think you can ask some kind of these questions to the students.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you, Achilles. All right. Looking at the chat and conscious of the time that we've actually come to a full hour, perfect timing. I don't see any more comments. I guess we can conclude this webinar here, but colleagues, please feel free to follow up with us if you have any further questions afterwards. And before I close, I would like to also quickly announce that we have a masterclass coming up on 14th of December, and as well as another webinar on 7th of December. The webinar will, both of these activities, so the webinar first on 7th and the masterclass will be focusing on the Young Europeans Call for Action, the short animated film program. while we will focus on the kit in the webinar on 7th, the masterclass on the 14th of December will be we'll have Simone Giampaolo from The Only Child, and also Adela Kazcimarek. I'm pretty sure I'm also not saying this correct. That's the with Magda. If you are interested in taking part in this masterclass, please feel free to register for this with your classroom, with your students, and you can. I will post the link right here, and then you can. Yeah. Also, I see my colleague here is posting more information on the one that is upcoming on 4th. So if you would like to register for this masterclass on 14th, I'm just posting the link here. Register here link. I believe you can also see more information on that page about how it works. And then, yep, there's another masterclass on the 4th of December. That, as my colleague mentioned, it's on La Strada. All right, I guess that's a good note to wrap this up. Thank you again for joining, and we will see you in the upcoming. So I'm sorry, Justina. So there's 2 of them actually. I forgot to mention. There's one on December 4th on La Strada. There's one on 14th on the Young Europeans Call for Action program, and there will also be a webinar on 7th that will be on the same Young Europeans Call for Action program educational kit. You can find more information on this on the EFF platform agenda, so there will be separate items for each of them. Yep, Chiara also noted the same. Thank you all. I hope that is clear. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me and contact me, and I will happily provide more information. And with that, I would like to wish you all a great evening and a weekend ahead.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Ray. Bye, Clementine. Bye, Carlota.